Hello, this is Echo Chernik. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and please don't forget to subscribe to my channel at the end of it. All right, this is Echo Chernik and we are going to learn how to use Illustrator in a several part session. Today is the first session and we are going to cover basic shapes and Illustrator as a whole. Just what, how the program works and how to use it, and what it is, and why it's so scary. It's really not that scary. So a lot of people are scared of Illustrator because it has a steep learning curve. Photoshop, you can get in and you can paint, and it sort of goes like, you just paint and you paint and you paint and you learn as you go along. Illustrator, you get into, and then there's the Bezier curves and the handles and the vector elements, and it gets like, ugh. But once you figure those out, it's not bad at all. It's just, that's a little bit intimidating for people that don't know how to use Illustrator. So Illustrator is a vector program and Photoshop is raster program. I'm going to switch over to Photoshop for a second here and show you exactly what that means. So this is Adobe Photoshop and my image size is right now 288 pixels by 432 pixels, 72 dots per inch, which means it's set to screen resolution. If I were to print this, it would print really, really small. And I'm going to draw a red circle. Doo-doo. I'm going to fill it in. And there's our red circle. And if I double click, that's the way the red circle looks like. Now, the difference between vector and raster is this. Everything that's raster, whether it's a photograph or whether it's a shape or text or line, the computer has to remember. Now, with the raster images, it remembers in all these little pixels. When I zoom in, and you've probably seen this when you've taken a beautiful photograph and printed it out and you're like, why is it all blurry? And you can see all the little pixels and the little blurry edges and you're like, oh, it looks terrible. That's because this is how the computer remembers this image. It remembers white pixel, pink pixel, red pixel, or if it's doing a face, it remembers, whatever the background color is, black, gray, right? And it remembers that all the way across. And that's how it works and remembers it, which is going to be limiting to the size you do things. It is awesome for some stuff like painting, skin tones, photo manipulation, realistic things. Perfect, wonderful. And when you work in Photoshop, you have to make sure you work at the right size, but that's a different lesson. Illustrator. I'm going to switch over to Adobe Illustrator here. I'm going to make a new document. Illustrator remembers things a little bit differently. I'm going to make my same red circle. Any tools that I use that I don't explain yet, I will explain. So just ignore my use of this for now. So the way Illustrator uses it, I'm going to zoom in the same, and you see I don't see any pixels. No matter how far I zoom in, there's no pixels. That's because what Illustrator is remembering is the math. It remembers these points up here, and it remembers that the angle of the circle is this many degrees, and this many degrees, and this many degrees. And if I change it, it now remembers that the angle is different. And so that's what it's remembering. It's just remembering those 4 points or those 50 points or those 1,000 points or this, and that's why the files for Illustrator are much smaller. And that's important because when you take an image like this, say I wanted to put it on a billboard, if I went over to Photoshop and I wanted to put that big red circle on a billboard, I'd end up with big chunky squares. If I wanted to do this vector image, I could make this as large as I want and it would always remain clean and smooth. So if you want to do a piece of art that you can blow up exponentially large or change, vector's really good. This doesn't work so well in photographs, which is why I work in a mix when I do some of my pieces. I'm going to show you one of my pieces next. So this is one of my pieces. Everything I'm going to show you today is going to be the basics of how to manipulate shapes. You're going to use shapes in all of your pieces. Illustrator is a shape-based program, so you have to not think of it as outlines. Like when you think of drawing, you think of an outline. Everything in Illustrator is shape. So this snowflake here is made up of all these different shapes, and you think of shapes and minishing shapes and lines, and those are the vector shapes that make it so easy for it to create to reproduce itself as large as it needs to. This here, let me show you an outline view. Those are all the different shapes and all the different lines that are in this piece. So go into one of those snowflakes. So here is the different shapes of the snowflake, and you can see all the different complicated lines, that go into that. And that's And that's what makes up the snowflake. So when I click it here, let's go back to preview. You click it, here's our snowflake. Okay. So when I say you can make anything out of shapes, you have to think of it as an object. That it's an object over an object, an object over an object. This is the same when it comes to text, and also if you are, you said you create artwork in pen and ink. I do a lot of converting my pen and ink artwork into vector lines. And your lines, when you draw a line in pen and ink, and you just, you draw a nice, for instance, you take a pen in here and you draw a little line like this. Your line is not just a line; it's actually a shape. It has the outer edges to it, which can be manipulated and changed, which helps you control your weight when you're creating a piece of artwork in Illustrator. So if you do a line and it's not quite perfect in Illustrator, you can go in and you can tweak it to make it just the way you want it, which is pretty awesome. Which is why it's a really good tool for using to create line art.
That sounds fantastic.
Yes, yeah, that's what you specifically wanted to learn. So, and we'll get to that. So, any questions so far? Okay, first thing I'm going to start with is the basics. So I'm going to shut this. You're going to go to make a new file. I'm going to go to File, New. Here it has a whole bunch of standard sizes that you can choose from. And under the preset details, you can change it to 5 inches by 7 inches. And you can set the measurements right here. Under points, picas, inches, millimeters, centimeters, or pixels. So it's under inches right now, 5 by 7. Ignore everything else for now. And then hit, you can choose between portrait or landscape. There's vertical or horizontal, and hit create. So now we have an artboard. Now what you have around your screen may look a little different based on how it's loaded and what what's actually on the screen at the time right now. So I'm going to shut these and reopen these up so that I can show you. Under Window, we want to go to the Layers palette and make sure that that is open.
Got it.
We're also going to go to Window and we're going to go to Swatches. We're going to open that as well. And you can actually just stack these nice and neatly underneath each other. And you'll have your layers and your swatches.
Got it.
Okay. This is called your artboard because it is the board on which your art will be living. So your artboard is may have many layers to it, which is up in the Layers palette, and we're gonna do that later. But for now, we're just gonna do a flat artboard, like a flat piece of paper, like we're just drawing on that piece of paper. We're not gonna worry about the layers. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. So on the left is our toolbar right here. This little guy here. Oh, sorry, that's Photoshop's toolbar. Let me get rid of Photoshop. This is our toolbar, and it has all of our tools on it. This upper guy in the left upper corner is the selection tool, and that has a little black arrow. And the direct selection tool we will be using later to manipulate the individual points on the shapes. So don't worry about the direct selection tool right now. Right now we're just going to use the move tool or the selection tool. Okay.
Okay.
Now if you look here, there's a whole bunch of other stuff. There's our pens with our Bezier tools, and here's how we do type and lines and et cetera, but we're not going to worry about that yet. We're going to start by learning about shapes because it's a shape-based program. So pop over to here to where you see, you should have an ellipse or some sort of shape in that box. And if you click on it, it should give you a choice of a whole bunch of shapes: rectangle, rounded rectangle, polygon, star.
Okay, I think mine looks like a rectangle.
Okay, that rectangle's fine. So you're going to pick a shape. You can do a rectangle if you want to be a rebel. And you're just going to make a shape like that.
Okay.
You got that? And now I'm going to pause here for a second, and I'm just going to show you another way we can make a shape is to click on that rectangle and then just click on our screen. And we'll get a little box that'll allow us to type in exactly what size we want the shape. So we can type in 3 inches by 3 inches, and we'll end up with another one. So let's make another one right now, just by using that method. So click on the ellipse tool or the rectangle, and then just rather than clicking and dragging, you're just going to click on the screen and fill in the numbers on the box. Make it whatever size you want. Be creative.
Okay.
Okay, so now we have 2 shapes and see how they overlap each other. Okay. Now I'm going to take we're going to go over here to the selection tool, and we're going to click one shape, and we're going to move it. to move it around.
Okay.
And then you're going to what I call click off, which basically means you just click somewhere else. So click, you click the shape and then you click off, and that clears it so you're not selecting anything right now. So click the shape, move it around, click off, click the shape, move it around, click off. And you can see I can actually move it outside of my artboard. So if I were to print this file right now, there's nothing on my artboard. This is the part here that prints. This is like the desk that your shapes are now sitting on. So they're not actually on the artboard. So I'm put those back in the artboard. So just move them around like that, as you can see. Okay, got that?
Got it.
All right, so you can see that one of them's overlapping the other one. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is change the colors of it. This is made up of a shape and a stroke, okay? If you come down over here to the color picker, you can see it's got two little squares. It's got a fill and a stroke. And the fill is going to be the color that's in the inside, and the stroke is the color that's on the outside. And you can click on the top box for the fill and the bottom box for the stroke. And the bottom left is a little picture that shows the default that just goes to black and white. And if you wanted to switch the fill and stroke, you click there. Now you can see it's not doing anything. Do you have any idea why it's not affecting my shape?
No, tell me.
Because I'm not clicked on it. You don't see the little handles around it, and it's not selected. It's not going to affect my shape. Now you can see that it's selected. When I click that bar, I've now switched it from the stroke and the fill colors. I'm switching them back and forth. Okay.
Okay.
Now we're making sure we're selected on the object. We are going to go to fill and double click. And we'll end up with our color picker. Woohoo, everyone likes the color picker. And you can use this to go ahead and select whatever color you'd like. Here's your bar of all the different colors. And you can see this top color is the selection. The bottom color is the color you currently have. And the higher up in the corner you go, the brighter it's going to be. It goes all the way down to white and then all the way down to black. I'll go into color theory and how all this works later on. But for right now, we're just going to pick a pretty color. I'll go into the hue, saturation, brightness, red, green, blue, CMYK, and all this. This is all specific colors. So if a client calls you up and says, hey, I need it to be this particular color, they might give you the RGB colors or the CMYK colors. But for now, we're just going to pick a pretty color. So pick a pretty color. And then hit OK. And then go to the other shape and do the same thing, but pick a different color. And when you're done with that, I want you to click on one of the shapes and click on the stroke, double click it, and give that a different color. Just double click on it. You can change it to whatever you want. Now there is several ways to do most everything in Illustrator and Photoshop. So I generally am going to go over one way to do it, and then I'll go over alternate ways to do the same thing later on. Because sometimes you might want to there's particular reasons you might want to choose to do it a different way. But right now we're just going to double click on it and have it appear. You got that?
Got it.
All right. Along the top, you should see this bar that's up here. You see this bar? I select on the ellipse. It says ellipse. It shows the fill color. It shows the stroke color. Da-da, da-da. You see how that?
Mm-hmm.
Now you can also go up here and if you click on your fill color, it will give you the swatches palette, and we'll talk about swatches later as well. And then here it talks about the stroke, so you can just click on the stroke. So if you lose the bar, you can go to Window, Control, and it goes on or off.
Okay.
Okay. Same with the toolbar. If you lose your toolbar, here you can here's where you handle your tools, which is this guy over here.
Okay.
Okay. So you click on it, and you can see here the shape and the fill color and the stroke color. And you can click on these and adjust it in the swatches palette. It also lets you change your stroke weight. If you click on this little arrow here or the up and down arrows, it'll let you make the stroke wider or smaller. So let's give it a good fat stroke. You able to get a nice stroke on there?
I am.
Awesome. We'll play with these other things later on. Don't worry about everything else for now. Okay, find a color that you like. Then I want you to go up to the window palette and go ahead and click the one that says stroke. Shortcut for that is Control F10. If you have a Wacom tablet, you can also set controls on the pads on the side of your Wacom tablet to just do smart hotkeys to automatically pop these puppies up. Did you get the stroke palette open?
I do.
Okay, so it should also say weight 14, which is the same thing as it's on the top, redundant. And you should see caps, which is the caps doesn't apply in this case. Corners don't apply, but the align stroke does. And this is in the newer versions of Illustrator. This didn't used to exist in the older versions, so this is kind of nice. And you see how when I click on it, the blue line is in the center? That's because there's a line and the stroke goes on either side of the line. When I align the stroke, I can click on this, and now the stroke is on the inside of my line or the outside of my line, which will be important for making shapes and things later on. So you can decide if you want the stroke to be on the outer, the middle, or the inside.
So my stroke palette does not look exactly like yours.
Do you have the option to?
So what it's giving me is, oh, okay. For whatever reason, it wasn't showing me all of those options. It was just giving me the weight. But now
okay, there might be a little arrow that says show options. There we go, right like that. See, this is why it's good that I have you on here, so that you can run into these problems. So then people are watching the video later on, if they have those problems, you'll have run through them for us. So
right, yeah. I've watched a few of these tutorials online. I'm like, this is not fair. This is not what my screen looks like.
This is not what my screen looks like. So your job here is to break it so that I can help fix this. So stroke, show options if you don't see the options, and you should see all of these wonderful options, including the align stroke. Okay?
Okay.
Now you got that, and you can move it all over the same as before. Now, this is important. The shape, I have made the stroke on the outside of the shape. The shape is still the shape. The stroke is on the outside of the shape, but it is a mathematical command for Illustrator. So there's actually not a shape on the outside. It's actually the blue circle is the shape, and then it has a stroke around the outside, which will be important when we start manipulating these shapes. So when I move it around, there's actually no stroke out here on the outside of the green. We can make that, and we will be making that later on, but that's really important, especially when it comes to manipulating your line art and to doing drawings and controlling them. You're going to use this a lot, but for now, you just remember that the blue shape, which has the bounding box, this box, it's called the bounding box, is around the shape, and that's our shape. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to show you how to manipulate these shapes in front of each other. Right now, this pink guy is on top of the blue guy. Okay?
Okay.
You move them around and make sure you can see that. So if you go up to Object, Arrange, you should see Bring to Front, Bring Forward, Send Backward, Send to Back. Now you're going to use this a lot. You're constantly going to be moving objects up and down and then grouping them together, and you have to do that, otherwise you would have just a mess of objects everywhere. As you saw in the other file that I showed you, just that snowflake was a bunch of objects. If you have just a big pile of objects, you're just going to have a hard time manipulating them and navigating them. So we use these to navigate things back and forth. So we're going to click on that bottom one and do Object, and you know to go to the Object palette because we're dealing with our object. Arrange, Bring to Front. Now it's on the front. Click on the back one, Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. Object, Arrange, Bring to Front. See that?
Cool.
Cool, right?
Yes, ma'am. Got it.
Okay. Next thing, I want you to click on whatever one's on top. Go back to our picker color, and I want you to click on your fill color. Okay, don't pull the picker up. Just click on the fill colors at the top, like I have here.
Got it.
By the way, the key commands for that, this is X. So you can see when you put your cursor over it, it says fill X, and then this says stroke. Click to activate X. So if you needed to that's your key command for it. There's key commands for all of this so that you can work really, really fast. Again, we'll cover that later. So Right now your fill color is blue. We're going to go to this little square with the red line through it. That universally means none. So now there is no fill color. It is transparent. So when we move the shape around, it's still a shape, but it's transparent, and it's going to overlap our other shape, and we'll be able to see, we'll be able to see through it. So you see that? And you can double click on the picker and give it another color, and go back to this guy and give him the 0. And you can go ahead and reverse it like this. When I do this, you see that now that my stroke has a line through it. That means this has no stroke on it. See, there's no stroke. And it has just the fill color. I don't know if you know what I just did, but if this happens to you, if you're like, okay, I'm going to go do that, and you're doing this and nothing's happening, it's because your shape is not selected.
Okay.
Always check to make sure your shape is selected, because that's super easy to forget. All right, you good so far?
I am.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we're going to go to next, object, transform. There's a whole bunch of cool things we can do in terms of transforming it, and we'll cover more of these later, but this is where you're going to find these. What I'm going to have you do right now is basically use these, but we're going to do them using the bounding box handles.
Okay. Can I make a comment real fast?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just for if anybody watching at home. So when we first started all of this, your toolbar did not look like my toolbar. You had more options than I did. I didn't have the shape options that you did. But I realized under the window menu, if you click on tools, you have the option to choose different tools, and I was able to switch from basic to advanced, and then
Awesome.
now mine looks like yours.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah. This is why you're here, to make sure that if there's any discrepancies, you can help me with it. So awesome. All right. Shape. Okay. So now we're going to click on one shape. Click on the shape that doesn't have the stroke, or just get rid of the stroke on whatever shape. This is our bounding box. The bounding box is an invisible box that goes around our shape. It doesn't actually exist. If we printed it, that little blue box wouldn't print. When we click on the corner or the sides, you'll see this little arrow guy appears. And if you click on that corner, you can drag it to all different shapes. And once you find where you want to be, you just let it go, and it will convert to that shape.
Okay.
So do that a little bit. Got that?
Got it.
Okay, so now I'm going to introduce you to your friend. Edit, undo. Illustrator has supposedly unlimited undos, but you can undo. There are settings that you can undo so far. Undo is, you can hit Control-Z on your keyboard, or edit, undo, because you just edited this, so that would undo the edit. So I'm going to edit. I'm sorry, undo. Now I'm going all the way back to where I was before. I just keep undoing all of these shapes, or from the last time I edited it. So if I were to go here to here to here and then undo, I hit Control-Z, and run back there. So if you screw it up, don't panic, just undo it. Edit, undo. Which is something you will miss greatly when you go back from doing this to pen and ink drawings, and you accidentally make a mark you didn't want to, and you're like, undo. So because it's really nice.
I have my tricks, but they're not pleasant.
Yeah, not the same as just undo. Okay,
and then
so
undoing when you're sewing is like a whole other nightmare.
All right, so use this bounding box to change the shape of it. Okay, you got that?
Got it.
You good with me so far?
Mm-hmm. I am.
Okay. Undo back to you have a circle.
Square in my case.
Square in your case. And I'm going to show you a couple keyboard commands in order to control the bounding box and our shapes. Back to a square?
Back to a square.
Okay. When you click on this corner, instead of just pulling it like this, I want you to hold down Shift and pull it like this. And what Shift will do is it will keep it in a square or a circle or whatever the proportions are of what you're changing. So therefore, you're not accidentally turning your circle into an ellipse. I mean, even if you're trying to do it by eye, it's really easy to not be circular. So you just hit Shift and it's going to pop right to your square or your circle. And you can see I can start to move it. I can move it as an ellipse, and then as long as I don't take my finger off the mouse, it's gonna give me the option to change it before I commit to it. So I hit Shift, and ta-da! It's now a circle. You see that? And when you let go of your mouse hand, it'll commit to that shape. And if you don't like it, undo it and do it again. Got it?
Got it.
All right, cool. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you. You see how when it moves from that corner point. Like for instance, I grabbed the bottom right corner and it moved from that corner point. Or if I grab up here, it moves from the bottom left corner point, the opposite corner point. If I want to change that, you notice there's a little tiny X in the center. That's your midpoint. While I'm moving this, I'm holding down Shift. If I also held down Alt, it'll go from the center instead of from the corner.
Oh, cool.
So, which is really good if you want to, keep everything aligned nice and neat. And we'll go into the aligning tools and stuff later. So you've got to take your shapes, align them by that center point, and then all your shapes won't be all skew and akimbo. Okay, now to move my, I'm going to move my artboard around right now. I'm moving my artboard by holding down the space bar, and I get this little hand. And that will actually let me move my little piece of paper around.
Cool.
You got that?
Got it.
Here's your zoom tool in case you want to zoom in a little closer. And then I just hold down the space bar, and that's how I get the little hand. The move tool is also, the hand tool is also down here. In case you can't remember space bar, forget, or you're like, whoa, what was that hand tool again? Here's the little hand tool. Think of it as your hand moving a piece of paper around. That's why it's a little hand like that.
Wonderful.
So again, you can use the keyboard command H if you want to skip to hand. If you don't want to use your space bar, you can use the hand tool, or you could just hit H and you'll pop right over onto the toolbar to here. Okay.
Okay.
So, and the selection tool is V. So if I were to go, I wanted to go from my hand tool to the selection tool, I could just hit V on my keyboard and pop, I've gone right up to the top. You'll see it's changed. And then H for hand, and then V for move tool. Okay. So figuring out, I know it's a little confusing, but figuring out the way you want to work, that's going to be something that you develop over time. I'll try to show you several different ways of doing it, and you can pick which way you use. I don't tend to use the keyboard commands. I tend to just preset everything or use it under the menus, but that's just me. A lot of people use the keyboard commands solely. They're just like, and the keys flipping all over the place. That's not me. So, okay. So I want you to click on your circle. Click on your circle. You ready?
Got it.
I want you to click on it with your move tool. I want you to hold down Alt and move it to the right. You should have 2.
I have 2.
Awesome. Now hit undo so you have 1 again. If you hold down Shift, it's going to stay at the same 45-degree angle when you move it. So that when you move it and you're holding down Shift at the same time, you see how it clicks to a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to move it next to it. And then when I let go of my mouse hand, I know that I have 2 circles that are on the same line. I don't have one a little higher or one a little lower. Same rules as when you're making the circle bigger or smaller. If you hold down Shift, it's going to keep it on the same line, or it's going to keep it the same size. Shift is the way you constrain your proportions. You got 2?
Got 2.
Let's change the color of one of these. Now I want to move this back over this guy, but I don't want to go up or down. So I'm going to click on it, but how am I going to move it to the left without going up or down?
What's a good way to zoom out?
So zoom out. There's the zoom tool right down here. Zoom tool is Z. You hit Z. And if you click on it, you zoom in. And if you hit Alt, it gives you a little minus on it, and you're going to zoom out.
Okay. Got it.
Got it? So, and also in the bottom left-hand corner, it says 300% right now. You could change that to be 100%, 150%, fit on screen. That fitting on screen will fit the whole artboard on the screen. See the white artboard is on the screen. Now it's not going to fit the shape down here in the corner on the screen because that's hanging off the artboard. But if I hit fit on screen, it will fit the entire thing. So, but another way I can zoom in is to I want to focus on just these 2 objects right now. So I have my zoom tool. I'm going to click in the upper left-hand corner. Whoop. Click in the upper left-hand corner and just drag downwards, and it's going to move it in and out like that.
Okay. Let me try that.
And use your little hand tool to move things around.
Oh,
So,
nice.
yes, you can zoom in and out by clicking on the by clicking on the zoom tool and holding down Alt to give a minus. Zoop, 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 zoop.
Thanks. Yeah, my screen just kept getting bigger and bigger. Appreciate it.
So no problem.
Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, that's okay. No, that's why you're here. So, all right. So go to the selection tool again, to the move tool, and select one of your shapes.
Got it.
Now, I want to move the shape to be over this shape, but I don't want it to be too high or too low. Here, so click on this, and hold Shift. It's going to keep us on the same axis.
Okay.
I didn't actually teach you that yet, but but I taught you how to use this concept in the other ways when we're making different sizes and navigating them. So same thing. If you hold down Shift, it's going to keep you on the same axis. It's going to give you these invisible line guides. See now it lines up perfectly. Oh, see, I just dropped it at the last second. What I did there is I brought it here and I brought it here, and I let go of my Shift before I let go of my mouse key, and it dropped. So you got to make sure when you move back that you let go of your mouse key first, then your Shift. Otherwise, at the last second, it'll drop out of place. You see me?
Yeah.
So I hold Shift, I bring it over, let go of my mouse key, then Shift. And if I bring it over there and I let go of Shift, you see how it pops up, goes offline. Oh, no, I don't want sticky keys. Sorry about that. I got excited. All right, so we're overlapping each other. Let's click on the top one, and you can go back and forth, and you can see the stroke. Okay,